The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Monday, August the 17th, 2026. We're live here at CHD TV. We have a great show for you today. So in just a second, Dr. Michelle Perro will be coming on, and we're going to be talking about those GLP-1 drugs that everybody is taking to lose weight. Are they good for you? I think not. Then Isabella Yon, our nutrition expert, is going to be coming on to talk about avocado oil again. Not good for you. Not what we thought. And followed by Mack Rosenberg, our General Counsel at Children's Health Defense. She's going to be talking about school-based health centres. Do you even know what they are? Do you even know that your child has one in their school? So I think this is going to be a warning to all parents about what they actually goes on behind the scenes in these school health centres. So first, let's get straight to our first guest, Dr. Michelle Perro. Good morning. For you today. So in just a second, Dr. Michelle Perro will be coming on, and we're going to be talking about those. Not quite sure what that was. But we're going to go straight to our headline. Live TV, everybody. We're going to go straight to our headline while Michelle's sorting that out. We're going to go straight to our headline, and it's from The Defender, and it's a 19-year-old sudden death linked to popular GLP-1 weight loss drug. She was in England at the time, and I think she's a Californian student in England, and she was on this GLP-1 weight loss drug. And so many people in the UK are on Mounjaro, I think it's called over there. But Dr. Perro, we've got to talk about this because so many people and children on these drugs. First of all, let's talk about what even is it?
So thank you, Polly. This is a concerning issue. GLP-1 drugs are they're called glucagon-like receptor drugs, and they're essentially a hormone. They're the opposite of insulin. People have heard of that drug and of that hormone. And what they do is that they kind of watch over appetite. So they're appetite suppressants in a sense. And these receptors are located in the intestine, but additionally, they're also located in your pancreas, in your kidney, in your brain, and different parts of your brain. Why that is, we can get into that, and also in your heart. And so these drugs have been devised for diabetes, type 2 diabetes, obesity, which is defined as a BMI over 95th percentile. There is an injectable form, as folks are seeing on their screen right now, and there's also an oral form. And the American Academy of Pediatrics in 2022 approved the use of these drugs for type 2 diabetes and obesity for kids over 12 years old, based on one study of 68 weeks without any long-term data, no long-term follow-up data. So they're operating under the umbrella, the guise that growing children are comparable to adults. That is mythology. A 12-year-old child is still developing their brain function, their neurologic function, their immunology, everything. I was so alarmed, and what you're seeing, Polly, is that I created this handout for parents, and I have a whole section for parents on why I'm so concerned about these GLP-1s. You can see here the side effects: gut issues, nausea, vomiting. What happened to Josephine in London? Pancreatitis, awful. Gallbladder disease, awful. Thyroid tumors and a certain cell in the thyroid called C cells, and a black box warning by the FDA. And don't forget, if you have nutritional deficiencies, it can affect long-term growth and development. This can also be a drug that's misused by children with anorexia, growing. And how about even in sports? Kids who are trying to lose weight for the wrestling team can quickly turn to GLP-1s. They're so available. Since the AAP released the guidelines that we can now use them, prescriptions have skyrocketed. And for the first year, there were 38% increase, and I think now 700% increase in the use of these pharmaceuticals. And they're being used off-label for kids who are just overweight like Josephine, her tragic story. And this is kind of crazy because we're not asking the very simple question is why do we have 20% and in some states more rate of obesity in our children? And this is a global issue. It's a Canadian issue. It's a London issue. It's happening in China now as they've adopted a Western diet. And we don't talk about obesogens and what is causing our children to look like this, where they used to be kind of lanky and thin and running around the park. If you look at a picture of children playing in a park from 1960s and now, they don't even look the same. Our physiology has changed, our morphology in a few decades. And so with just giving a pharmaceutical $1,200 more or less month prescription and a kind of a convenient drive-through to get kids to lose weight versus addressing the root cause. Not to mention that the weight loss is not necessarily fat loss. It's lean muscle mass. And when kids stop the drug, there's a higher rate of regaining the weight, scary as heck, and they gain it back at not as lean muscle as fat. Now, what they're not telling you, especially in a growing child, they're using it off label, as I mentioned, 8-year-olds. So they can also lose bone mass. And that bone mass that you lay down in childhood is what prevents you from developing osteoporosis and osteopenia as adult. It's not just a female problem, by the way. Also concerning. You can also lose organ tissue. Now, we've seen some alarming lawsuits coming out of the use of these drugs in adults, such as optic neuritis. There's a big lawsuit going on right now. So there are side effects we haven't even seen. Now, there are some uses in adults for these GLP-1s. For example, it's been shown to be helpful in Parkinson's disease. So if you are thinking, well, gee, if it's helpful in Parkinson's, we know it has an effect on neurocognition. And we have not looked at that effect in children. Is that changing brain physiology, brain chemistry, brain development? No studies. How can I address that? So these things need to cause alarm. When we hear a case like Josephine's, and I believe in the UK there were 158 deaths just from using these drugs, there needs to be a moratorium, a hold, a pause, a stop, because Josephine didn't even meet the requirements. She wasn't a type 2 diabetic, and nor was she obese. She was overweight. There's a differentiation there. I know people who are also prescribing this drug off label for type 1 diabetes. So it's being used for all types of things. And I am not referring to adults. That's a different form. I'm talking about children who are not just mini adults, who have a different physiology, rapid cellular turnover. They utilize nutrients differently than adults. And this all must be considered. Why the rapid push? I don't understand it. Let's get to the root cause, Polly, which is the poisons in our food, GMOs, pesticides, ultra-processed foods, other chemical additives like the plastics, which are estrogen mimics. An increased aromatase can certainly affect weight gain, which it has to do with increased estrogens. So you can see this is why I've been on with my organization, GMO Science, regarding pesticides. Now, here's a side thing. Look at that. They are obesogens, many classes, the organophosphates, the organochlorines, the carbamates. They all affect thyroid function, a key factor in energy production. Commonly, the pyrethroids, permethrin, which can interfere with, look at that, sex hormones, neurotransmitters, atrazine. Most of Europe doesn't even use this herbicide anymore. And this is the one that increases aromatase enzyme activity, which raises estrogen level, and increased estrogens promote fat storage. You should also know, Polly, I'm glad you asked. Thank you for asking. If kids are obese and then they drop weight quickly, these xeno compounds, these foreign chemicals, are stored in fat. There is a rapid dump of toxic chemicals that the body stores. That's where you store a lot of your whatever you're exposed to. Toxic metals, plastics, etc., are in fat tissue. Your body protects you. Often people who are overweight are more inflamed, more toxic, and that's a protective coat. You drop it quickly, and if you're not prepared for this rapid detoxification, that could also produce side effects. all those toxins begin to circulate freely, and where they go is unpredictable across the blood-brain barrier, kidney, etc.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about. So first of all, it's absolutely gross. So they inject it into their stomach. I mean, that alone makes me want to throw up. And then once it goes in, does it paralyze? People are saying it paralyzes the stomach, but you mentioned the heart as well. I mean, people need to know this. You put this into your child that's 12 years and above, as approved by AAP, your child could die like that girl just did.
Yeah, so what it does is slow gastric emptying and promotes a sense of fullness because it slows the stomach from emptying quickly. And for some folks, that slowing stops and they have food sitting for hours and hours or days in their stomach, which can then ferment and become toxic itself. And the outflow of the stomach, called the pylorus, can also literally become obstructed. And so these types of issues, forget the pancreatitis for a minute, and those issues can cause vomiting and they seem to get people on these drugs rapid electrolyte disturbances. What I learned about through Josephine is I saw in the great CHD report, of course, is that she had something called myocardial bridging. And the coroner said, well, Josephine died of tirzepatide and this underlying congenital heart defect. And I thought, what? Myocardial bridging. I've never heard of this congenital heart defect. I've been doing this for almost 45 years. And so I did a deep dive, and it turns out 1 in 4 of us have this anomaly. It's asymptomatic, doesn't cause a problem. You don't know you have it because you don't know it till autopsy. However, if you've got that and then you're on tirzepatide or some other GLP-1 agonist, what you don't know, and it's not on the Eli Lilly spec sheet. I looked at it preparing to talk today, and I said, did they report out this? Well, there are GLP receptors in part of the heart called the sinoatrial node. And that area is responsible for heart rate. So now we have a kid, here's the clinical scenario, who's dehydrated, she's vomiting, she has electrolyte changes, she's on this drug, she hasn't taken any fluid, and she's taking a drug that is stimulating increased heart rate from these receptors in her heart. And then she had this 1 in 4 chance of myocardial bridging, and that increases her heart rate and could have and cause an arrhythmia, which is what we're saying. There is the definition. So instead of the coronary arteries running on top of your heart, they're running through the muscle. And if the heart is contracting harder because you have decreased volume, because you've been vomiting, not taking fluids, perhaps you have diarrhea, I didn't know her entire clinical situation, you can see that the heart is pumping harder, compressing those coronary arteries and causing some type of fatal cardiac outcome. Children should not be dying of this. This is a preventable tragedy. And so the wisdom of using this drug off-label in a young person and remember, we're still developing. The brain is still developing until 25 years old. So we're not done growing, even though she was 19, not a pediatric patient, although I have some kids I've seen into their 30s, and some adults never grow up, but Polly, different subject. So this is sort of like, what are we doing? Where is the common sense manual of how to treat a kid? What I wanted to hear is, why did she have weight challenges? Was it her diet? Were GMOs? Was it pesticides? Was it stress? Was it plastics? Was she on birth control pills? Did she get the COVID shot? I actually looked up spike protein and GLP-1s to see if there was any relationship there. So we have to investigate the entire clinical scenario and timeline and what we're exposing our children to.
And also, while I know you listed a load of the food and how bad that is, but also screen time. These children need to get off their screens and out in the park and playing, riding bikes, and all those things that we used to do as children, because I fear that the lack of exercise is another huge problem.
Polly, thank you for saying that, because actually that's a huge problem. And we know even in diabetics, when in let's say for children, there are camps, summer camps for diabetic children. And we know, for example, that on rainy days when the kids can't go out, let's say, and play, that when monitoring their sugars, as a type 1 diabetics, their sugars become more difficult to control. When they are exercising, they have better utilization of their sugar, even in type 1 diabetes. So we know, for example, if you eat a meal and you go out and take a walk, it's better management of your sugar than if you don't. So this relationship between exercise, imagine diet and exercise, here we are, is key. And our children, because of society, lockdown, screen time, overscheduled, all the stuff that young families are dealing with, are not exercising as much as they used to. And because many of them are dealing with obesity, they don't feel as well. And it's hard to move around that extra weight. I said 20% of American children now are obese, similar in Canada as well. So that means 1 in 5 kids. In some states, it's 1 in 3 children. It can vary depending on ethnicity and socioeconomic status, where children of color and children of lower socioeconomic means have greater numbers of obesity. And I also share obesity is not benign. It's associated with cardiovascular disease, autoimmunity, mental health challenges, bullying. So this is not a benign condition.
Dr. Perro, we're out of time, sadly, but I could talk to you forever on this subject. Shame on the AAP for approving this for children aged 12 years and over. But Dr. Perro, we hope to have you back on again, and thank you for sounding the alarm on these ghastly weight loss drugs.
Thank you, Polly. Thank you for covering this important topic.
Of course, thank you. All right, everyone, we're going from discussing weight loss drugs to what's in our food. Let's bring on Isabella Yon. Good morning, Bella.
Hi, Polly. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Right, so avocado oil. I mean, I have just gone to Natural Grocers and stocked up on avocado mayonnaise.
Yeah, it's really sad. I think many of us, in their feat to avoid seed oils, have been opting for avocado oil-based products. And the sad news is there's a new study that just came out. The researchers at UC Davis, they looked at a variety of packaged foods, all the things that, some of us are probably buying, things like avocado oil chips, mayonnaise, also salad dressings. Primal Kitchen's a brand that's pretty popular, Chosen. And they extracted this oil from the foods and they tested it, and they actually found that around 89% total, so 48 out of 54 products that they tested, had oil profiles that weren't actually consistent at all with authentic avocado oil. So it was 93% of the chips, 71% of the mayonnaise, and 100% of the salad dressings that they tested did not match authentic avocado oil. So the sad reality is that, many of us have been purchasing these products, spending excess money, and giving unknowingly seed oil products to our families and to our children.
So when did Primal Kitchen sell out to what? I can't, Lou, put that up again. Do you mind the one that shows Kraft? I think it's Kraft bought them out. So they do these amazing products. Like, there you go. Kraft, Heinz bought out Primal Kitchen. I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't have done this segment right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you bring up, Polly. A lot of these brands that start off smaller and do have good intention do get these very shiny packages, appealing to them from big food, and they do sell out. And the sad reality is that nowadays it's not enough to, simply go to the store and look at the labels, because a lot of these products require a deeper dive. Primal Kitchen is owned by Heinz. Siete, which was another really popular brand that was actually founded in Austin, Texas, small little family, they sold out to Pepsi. And actually just this week, Purely Elizabeth, which is a popular granola brand, organic, popular amongst a lot of the health community, they just sold out to Ferrero. So it's really important that we're paying attention to what's going on in the big food industry, and really just being very diligent about keeping up to date with, what ingredients may change as time goes on and these companies are bought out.
Yeah, Purely Elizabeth, another thing that's sitting in my cupboard right now. I can't believe it. I guess they get paid a lot of money, and then what? These big companies buy them out and substitute cheaper stuff in there.
Yeah, I think what you've got to think about is price. Sadly, we've learned this through, all the work you guys do at CHD TV and Children's Health Defense. These huge corporations are all about the money. And so even in this avocado oil case, the study itself didn't actually test what oil was being substituted in, but it would make sense that they are going to be cheaper commodity oils. So your soybean oil, sunflower, canola, corn. Sadly, big food is just out to make as much money as possible. And many of the products that were tested and failed the avocado oil test were the companies that are owned by big food. And again, it's all about the money.
So was there any avocado oil in it? Because someone said to me when they knew we were doing this segment this morning, oh, well, it's just got a little bit of other kind of oil in it, which obviously is not what we want. We don't want any of that in. That's why we're spending so much money on this. So is it canola? Do we know anything?
So we don't know specifically what oil, has been substituted. The sad reality is that there is not a lot of regulation in regards to avocado oil, and this is the big problem. There's actually been, kind of eyebrow raisers on avocado oil for a while now, a few years, especially the avocado oil we're actually buying on the shelves and whether that is actually avocado oil that we're using also in our cooking. But yeah, there's very minimal regulation about how much avocado oil actually has to be in there for it to be labeled as avocado oil. And I think, there lies the root of the problem, really. There were a few brands and products that did actually pass the test as they did it. Probably smaller known brands like Grazia. They're usually, olive oil based, and they are a good, substitute for the chips and the mayo. And a company called Avo, they were actually one of the only brands that they tested that cleared for actually being avocado oil. So there are a few, but at the end of the day, we say this, it does take more work, but I really do just advocate for making your own. I think that's the reality shock that I've learned from this. I was buying these products for my family. It's, busy mum with young kids. It's a lot easier for me to go and buy an avocado oil based mayonnaise than sit there and make my own. Although it is quite quick. It's just another step. But, the sad reality is I think we need to be making our own things. And then even, what are we using to cook with? Well, again, that's a whole nother thing. Is the avocado oil we're using to cook with really avocado oil? Probably not at this point. So I encourage you to, cook with render fats yourself, actually, from meats. Tallow, grass-fed butter is great to be used at low smoke points. I think we've got to get back to animals where we know where the fat is coming from.
Yeah, and I know there's many vegetarians watching right now. So
Yes.
for you, let's talk about olive oil though, because you've got to be careful with olive oil now. You can't just, if it says organic olive oil, does not mean that it's pure oil.
I know. Sadly, I mean, this is avocado, olive oil could be almost a whole nother show on itself. There's a lot going on with olive oil too. I encourage everyone to look into it and what's going on there. But again, it's, can we trust these products? And I think it's about doing our research and finding brands that are not sold out. Definitely smaller brands are great. Looking in Europe for the olive oil and making sure it's there's just so many things that come with this. So yes, olive oil, there is olive oil out there that is not faulty, but it's about doing our research and finding these smaller brands and, speaking to these people. There's a lot of people out there, like Lovebird cereal, for example, they're very big on the internet about disclosure and saying, look, we will never sell out. And they, the founder will come on and talk about this is why we believe what we believe, and the products that we put out there are clean, and this is why we will never sell out. So I think it's about, again, digging a little deeper and really thinking about if we are going to splurge on some sort of packaged food, a healthier option, do we know truly where it is coming from and that the company behind it, what they stand for?
And well, the young people, like I've got youngish nephews and things like that, and they've come to stay with me, and I try to talk to them about things like this, and they're like, oh, we don't care, we're fine. And why should they care? Because in the future, when they want to try and have children and things like that, it kind of matters, doesn't it?
Absolutely matters. What we eat is everything, and preconception health is so big. We talk a lot about this on Mothers to Be. We have so much free information on our motherstobe.com website. I definitely encourage you guys to check it out, but really about the importance of the health that you're in before you conceive, and just seed oils themselves, which, we 99% are probably sure this is what's been substituted in those avocado oil products, are a big problem. They're very high in omega-6 fatty acids, and although although omega-6 is not inherently bad, our modern diets, we are consuming so much of it, up to 20 times greater than actually what's an appropriate level. And it's all about ratio. It's contributing to inflammation and disease. And we're getting sick before we even, have the chance to have children, which is not setting up our babies and our kids for good health, really. And then there's also the potential for oxidative stress. And you think about these oils that have been through such a refining process, really heated, and then sitting in usually plastic bottles, traveling across the world, traveling to our stores. These are going to go rancid and be oxidized and create trans fats and all of these things. I think it's easy to brush off, Polly, like you mentioned. People are like, oh, it doesn't really bother me, a little bit won't hurt. But over time, these things can really contribute to oxidative stress and illness, accelerating aging, and then illnesses like heart disease, diabetes. I mean, you see it everywhere nowadays. It's so prevalent. We were just talking about seeing that in children and adults too. I mean, it's rampant, and we've got to wonder why. And I think we're eating so much processed packaged food. And again, these people don't have our best interest in mind when they're putting these ingredients into these products. They want our money.
It's really interesting, Bells, as well, because as we've been interviewing a lot of unvaccinated families recently. Yeah. And what we found in the unvaccinated families is a few sort of behavior problems, if you like. Not much, everyone, sure, but just a bit. And we're then looking back at the food. So can you talk for a second about how what you put in your child? You might think, oh, let's go for a treat. And the treat is full of oils and colorings, and then the kid's happy because it's delicious. I don't know why these bad things are delicious, but let's face it, everybody, some of them really are. And then they wonder why their child's having a temper tantrum or a mental breakdown.
Absolutely. And, there are so many studies on this that you can easily look up. Like food dyes have been linked to ADHD type symptoms. Excess sugar has also been linked to behavior issues. And also you think of blood sugar issues. These kids, again, are going for their treat. Is it really a treat when they're going to have such a huge energy crash afterwards? And you're going to be dealing with tantrums and arguments, and it's just going to be difficult. But yeah, when they're eating this refined sugar and these processed ingredients, their blood sugar is going on a roller coaster. So they feel amazing immediately, and they're so happy and they're feeling great for their treat. And within an hour or two, you will see this massive energy crash. And I just think these kids, as adults, we're a lot more equipped, some of us, some people, to deal with this emotional regulation. But these small children, we're just not setting them up for success when we're giving them these things and then expecting them to, behave perfectly and sit in chairs and listen to teachers and things like that, when they have all this sugar and junk running through their body that literally has been tested and shown that can cause these behavioral issues.
So we did have you on, Bella, last week, and you talked about school foods and how to pack your child's lunchbox and everything. So people do go back to that, and it also is in our back to school toolkit as well, because the last thing you want is your child having a meltdown because you've given unsuitable food for them at lunch. Next minute, they're in a psychiatrist's office. We've heard these stories, and they're being given psychotropic drugs, all because we gave them the wrong food. And that might sound crazy, but we've done stories on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think a big thing that I really try and get across to parents is your kids don't have to be miserable. You don't just have to be giving them like carrot sticks and a chunk of beef. You can make fun alternatives at home that are more balanced. We make a treat every week at home. My kids love to get involved and bake with me. We make sure that it has a protein source, a fat source, and a carbohydrate source in there, no refined sugar, but it still tastes delicious. And, we have friends that will come and play, and they maybe are used to eating these more packaged foods, and they still love the treat that we make. So I think you can have fun with it, but really it's just about educating your kids about why we want to nourish our bodies, so that we feel great, so that we have stable energy, and encourage them to make these decisions also for themselves.
And you have a lot of recipes that you've put together over the year. As you are a nutritionist, can you tell everybody what kind of a nutritionist you are? Is there different types? I don't know.
Yeah, no, there is, some people go the dietitian route. I'm a clinical nutritionist, so I did my master's in clinical nutrition, where you can get really into the nitty gritty about looking at the whole person and really yeah, just looking at root cause issues and then more of a holistic perspective when it comes to food. So did my master's there and also my nutritional therapy practitioner certification. So yeah, as Polly mentioned, I have a ton of recipes and also just happy to help. Reach out on our Instagram, happy to help you guys find recipes that are suitable for your family and that your kids will actually eat.
Well, Isabella, thank you for being on this morning and warning us about avocado oil. I'm going to go and, I mean, it hurts me that I've spent so much money on stuff, but I'm going to go and wipe it all out and not even going to give it to my chickens. Out it goes. And thank you for being on this morning, Bells.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, everybody, we're going to go to our general counsel, Kim Mack Rosenberg. We have to behave ourselves when our general counsel is on CHD TV. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Polly. How are you?
Legal, keeping its eye on everything. Right. Well, I'm fine, thank you. But let's talk about school-based health centers because I actually, being I'm a granny now, but I actually don't even know what they really are. What are they? Tell us.
So they are not what a lot of people think they are, right? A lot of people think it's just kind of a school nurse on steroid type thing, but it's not. Oftentimes, in fact, in most cases, the school-based health center is not run by the school. The school is contracting out to some third-party medical provider and giving them space. And there's probably an agreement between the school district and this third party to lease space, rent space from the school. And they're coming in and providing oftentimes very comprehensive medical care. And parents don't even always know what they're providing. And these forms get slipped into, when kids go back to school and there's that packet of forms you have to fill out for everything from, my child can be photographed for the school website to my child can get health care at the school-based health clinic. And parents may not be carefully reading those forms because they're thinking back to the days when they were in school and it was the school nurse and, you had a stomach ache or you threw up or you had a cough and you would go to the school nurse and they would call your parent and your parent would come pick you up. That's not what's happening anymore. And in fact, oftentimes schools don't have a school nurse on staff every day or there all day every day because these clinics are there. And the clinics are offering everything from well child visits and vaccinations, mental health care, including prescribing psychotropic drugs for children, and a lot of reproductive and sexual health care as well. And it is the potential for things going sideways is very real. And parents may be signing away those rights if they're not carefully reading those forms. And then in some states, there are certain types of health care, generally around mental health care and reproductive health care, that students of a certain age, and the age varies state to state, may be able to access without parental consent in any event. But what we have is parents not knowing what their children are getting. And oftentimes these school-based health centers aren't even willing to share information with the child's pediatrician or PCP. So no one really knows what's going on in those clinics.
Kim, I had heard a horrible story. I just want to give everyone an example. Okay, so this mother told me that her daughter was on the swim team, swam for the school in swimming. And the school nurse or health center pulled this girl in and said, to be a better swimmer, you need to be on the contraceptive pill. This girl's like 12 years old, okay? You need to be on the contraceptive pill because then you can regulate yourself and swim. And all the top swimmers are on it. So the girl's like, okay, because she's 12. And because you're going to be on the contraceptive pill, so that you don't get cervical cancer, we're going to give you a shot of Gardasil and you'll never get cancer. And so this all without the mother's permission, this all happened.
Right. And if you have a child who, and for various reasons, sometimes parents and children have sort of stress relationships, right? So if you have a child, we put up the graphic of the girl who was prescribed Zoloft at school by a school-based health center and had it sent home in basically a little hazmat baggie and was told, this is enough for the weekend. You come back every day during the school week and we'll give you your pill. And that way your parents aren't going to know that you've even been prescribed this drug. But here she is taking the medication outside of the bottle that it's prescribed in, right? And that may in and of itself be problematic in various states. She's taking it home in a baggie. She has younger siblings who, could be nosy and going through their sister's backpack, and they find something and they think it's candy and they take it. And your parents don't know if something is happening to you, and your pediatrician doesn't know if something is happening to you. And with the vaccines, what always worries me, not only are parents who have an opposition to vaccination or an opposition to certain vaccines, but even if you are a vaccinating parent and you're taking your child to the pediatrician and you're getting the vaccines that are recommended by your pediatrician for your child, if you don't know that your child has gotten a shot at school, that child may be double vaccinated with nobody's knowledge. And especially with things like the HPV vaccine, you can refer to it as Gardasil, you can refer to it as the HPV vaccine. A 12-year-old may not know that those are the same thing, even if they're sharing with their parents. So there are a lot of potential pitfalls, and they're not only giving oral contraceptives. Some of these clinics are doing the contraceptive implants in young girls. So they're performing, a minor surgical procedure in these clinics. And from what I've heard from many parents is that the clinics are very quick to prescribe medications, for example, psychotropic medications, to children rather than first trying counseling. And children are getting, in many schools, quickly screened for potential mental health concerns. And those screens themselves can be written in such a way, right? It's all how the question is asked. So they may ask a question like, they'll send home a screening tool maybe. Do you feel that you're in a safe place to answer these questions? Well, that suggests to the child that maybe being around their parents is not a safe place to answer those questions. So there's all this power of suggestion involved in this. And then they get the screening back. They get the results that suggest mental health concerns. Rather than doing counseling with the school counselor or recommending to the family that they get outside counseling, these children are shuttled off to the school-based health clinic where they're very quick to prescribe medication rather than engage in counseling activities.
Kim, this might sound a bit extreme, but it seems to me from all the stories I've heard since we've been doing back to school stories, that once your child goes to school, it's like once they go to a hospital, they kind of own your child. They can say your child has a mental health issue. I'm going to refer them to this. They can potentially take your child and vaccinate your child. What rights do we have as parents? Because schools are becoming a very scary place to send your child to.
Well, parents always have the option. That's not always easy, but they have the option to homeschool their children. I think you also have to pay very close attention to the forms that are coming home for you to fill out. And if you do not want your child to participate in the services of the school-based health clinic, you have to very clearly opt your child out. You need to ask questions, even if who's paying for this? Are they billing your insurance? And you're essentially having to pay for, and your insurance is having to pay for services you don't approve of for your child and you may not know about. Children are being enrolled in Medicaid through these school-based health clinics, and Medicaid is keeping that information from families. So parents have to be very, very alert. And you also have to talk to your student about what happens if they try to send you to one of these clinics and how you as a student can also refuse treatment, right? And there are real issues here, generally speaking, always about informed consent in children, but children should know to speak their mind too. And there are many children who feel like, well, someone in a position of authority is telling me to do this, I have to do it. You need to teach your child to say, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to take that medication. You don't have to get that vaccine. You don't have to let them put sealants on your teeth. And these clinics are set up and they're kind of pitched to families and communities as a way to equalize access to healthcare. And I don't think there are any of us who would say, children shouldn't have access to healthcare. But you don't have to have access to healthcare that cuts the parent out of the equation. And that's what many of these school-based health clinics are doing, right? They are cutting the parent out so you don't even know what's happening to your child during the school day. And then the schools are absolving themselves of liability because it's a separate party with whom they contract. It's not the school itself who's providing these services. So they try to disclaim any liability if something goes wrong.
Yeah, and take them out of school and guard us all day, 100%. Kim, what about if you wrote a letter? So if you wrote a legal letter saying, if my child is taken into a health centre, if my child was given a medication, if, then I will sue you type thing. Will that suffice or no?
I mean, it's certainly not a bad thing to do. It's also not a bad thing to be very clear on those forms that you're filling out, that you do not consent to treatment by the school-based health clinic. And if you find out, you will take, legal action to the extent that legal action is possible. Unfortunately, it's oftentimes hard. I would never say never, but it's difficult to bring a case where someone hasn't been injured. And the last thing you want is, to be able to have a legal action because your child has suffered an injury. So you want to do as much upfront, pay attention to those forms, opt out of the school-based health clinic, say that you want, the forms may not give you all the options that you want, right? You can write on the form that you have to be notified before your child goes to a school-based health center. In the same way that the school nurse would call if your child were sick in school back in the day. You want to know when your child is being offered the option of going to that facility.
Right. Well, now, okay, we're gonna move to a different topic, but just to say to everybody, everything Kim just talked about is going to be in this little interview is going to be in the back to school kit. So if you want that back to school, it's got all the interviews we've done on schools will be in there, and you go to Children's Health Defence Back to School, childrenshd.org/back to school. It's a bit long. Speak to the tech team about that. It's a little bit long, guys. All right, that's where you go and you get all the information. Now, Kim, we've got to talk about the Tylenol petition because Brian Hooker and I on Friday did put the wrong link up. I do apologize, everybody. So what's the deal?
So CHD has submitted to the Food and Drug Administration, to FDA, a citizen petition asking FDA to ban infant Tylenol, which is Tylenol for children 2 and under. That has no recommended dosage. It's talk to your doctor, talk to your medical professional. So it's kind of the wild, wild west of delivery of that medication, yet that is frequently recommended for children under 2 who have received vaccines, for example, or who have a fever. And again, it doesn't have the information that parents actually need to dispense that drug. There's no, when you get the children's Tylenol for children over the age of 2, there are dosages and weights. And even then, though, we see so many adverse effects from Tylenol, and the petition really lays it out and lays out a lot of the scientific evidence as well, that we need much stronger warnings on Tylenol for young children. And also, Tylenol's often administered as part of labor and delivery to the delivering mother. So we need more warnings about that so that parents to be, as mom is delivering, know what kind of drugs they're getting and why. But particularly for the infants, it really is a risk. Brian talked about, you showed a clip of Brian talking about the risks for young children with respect to autism, with respect to other neurodevelopmental conditions. It's critical that people recognize the issues in administering Tylenol to infants. And again, we're asking them to just take it off the market, off the over-the-counter market for infants.
And so the link in the show notes will be the link for people, right?
Yes. And we are asking people to sign that petition to show the FDA that parents and others are very concerned about this issue for their babies and young children.
All right. Well, another subject now is the 17th of September, the conference in DC. Children's Health Event's going to be in DC, and we'd love to see you all there if you can make it. But if you can't, there is an online as well. I think if you go to the website, which I think in a second will come up with there you go, chdconference.org. That's nice and easy, everyone. chdconference.org. Go there and you'll see your options. You can join us online, or it'll be wonderful to see you there, Kim. And we hope you're going to be there as well, hopefully.
Hopefully I will be there as well. And there's it's a packed day of incredible speakers. We have Senators Ron Johnson and Senator Rand Paul, Representative Paul Gosar, Lara Logan, who's an investigative journalist, Tony Lyons, who's the MAHA president, Sayer G, Jan from Epoch Times, and then lots of our own folks, right? You'll be there, Polly, Catherine Paul, Michael Caine, Brian Hooker, and of course, Mary Holland.
Yeah, no, it's going to be so much fun. So if you can be there, people, we would love to see you. And I want to hear all your stories as well. Next thing to tell everybody is our Roku channel. Our tech team have done an amazing job on CHD TV Roku channel. So if you have Roku television or a black Roku box, you just download CHD TV. And it's not, I don't think it's CHD.TV. I think it's just CHD TV. No, it is .TV, it says there. No, it doesn't. I'm not, Lou, do you know? Anyway, do go and see CHD.TV. Okay, download that on Roku, and it's all free. All our movies are on there, all our shows are on there, and you get to watch it free. And we will be releasing Duty to Disobey. And sorry it's taken a little bit of time, but we will be releasing Duty to Disobey on Roku in the first week of October. I think it's October the 8th, but we'll tell you more about that soon. And that will be there for you all as well. So yes, great stuff happening. I know that was a bit of a show, really, wasn't it? So let's summarize it up. So first up, don't take weight loss drugs, make your own mayonnaise, Tylenol's bad, and watch maybe homeschool. I think that's basically the summary of the whole show. But good news is happening at CHD, isn't it, Kim? We need to leave on a good note, I think.
No, absolutely. And I think that, Polly, your team does such a great job, and Catherine's team at The Defender, of getting the news out and getting information to people. And September 17th is going to be a really positive day. I mean, it shows how far we've come in our message, that we have members of Congress who are wanting to come to our events and wanting to speak to our audiences. It's going to be a really, really exciting day. And there is so much that is happening right now in DC with the executive order, which you've reported on, and other things that are happening that I think people should look to. Yes, there are still many problems we want to address and issues we want to resolve, but there are good things happening too.
There are. Well, Kim Rosenberg, thank you so much for all that you do in the legal department and for being on CHD TV this morning. And to our viewers, as always, thank you for your chat. Thank you for being so loyal and donating to us to keep us going. So we truly appreciate you. And Michael Caine will be with you tomorrow morning.
The power we have is the truth.
This is the nation's leading conference.
It's so empowering to be joining together and working for our children.
Coming to CHD was the best decision that I've made probably all year.
It is a new day when senators and representatives want to associate themselves with Children's Health Defense. Why? We're telling the truth, and they know that. And because people are listening to us, and they know that.
To me, health on a political level is the most important subject. We need to raise a healthy generation.
We, the people, are waking up. We are taking back the system.
The federal government's job is not to ensure the stable legal risk for vaccine manufacturers.
Remember, we're a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I can't say it any better.
We can live to see a better day where people will be healthier and where government and corporations will be forced to be more responsible.
You can't be a decent human being and know what we have now come to learn, and turn your back on it and close your eyes.
Tell us your name, please.
Kristen O'Neill.
And this is about your daughter?
Yes, Chloe.
Okay. Chloe, okay.
Yes.
And this is some time back because she's now 20...
She's 29.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This was at 18 months old. She had the MMR the next day. She didn't wake up, and we were coming into the noontime hour, and so I went in to try to see if she was stirring, and she kind of stirred a little bit, so I thought, well, I'll give her a little bit more time, and I waited and waited, and she didn't, so I went over to her crib, and I looked in at her, and she was laying on her side, and she kind of had her eye, like just one eye open, and so I just kind of tried to, arouse her, and I picked her up, and the best word I could use to describe it was she was very lethargic. And so I called my husband right away, and I said, we're headed to the hospital. And they did not have a bed. And the doctor said, I will draw some blood and you can take her home. And I said, no, I'm not taking her home because she'll die. I'm not a doctor, What am I supposed to do? And he said, well, we have to let the culture grow, whatever that means, to find out how to treat her. And so in the meantime, we stayed at the hospital. I was afraid to go home. And the doctor said she has a blood infection.
What infection?
Blood infection.
Blood.
Well, that's sepsis. And I thought, how did this happen? And I mean, you're just like, well, how does this kind of thing happen? So I knew in my heart of hearts, I knew what it was. I knew that it had to be the vaccine.
Did you ask the doctor? You say, I think it's a vaccine.
I did not ask him. And in hindsight, I just had an inkling, but I did not ask him. I regret not asking him. After the COVID debacle, and after and I've done a lot of research through the years about vaccines and what the ingredients in the vaccines. The no safety tests have been done, no tests done for safety or effectiveness. And, as a young child, I had measles, I had chickenpox, I survived, and Chloe even had chickenpox, and she was fine. She just,
So how was she? So you found out she had sepsis, the culture growing or whatever. What did they do with her?
They put her on intravenous antibiotic to kill the infection. But she was classic, all of the, and as I was telling the young lady here, 27 years ago, autism wasn't even a word. They would use different words, That kind of set us on the path of, well, you need to go see a developmental pediatrician. You need to go see a geneticist. And I was like, oh, Lord. So there was no genetic problems. The developmental pediatrician at UVA said she has developmental delays, and we call it failure to thrive, and I whatever that means. So.
All right. And did she fail to thrive as she went? Did you give her any more vaccinations?
Yes, I did. I did. Never again.
What was the last one she had?
It was, what is the 9-year-old? She was 9. Took her out of the public school system because they weren't teaching her anyway. And we discovered a reading program from this school in Philadelphia called the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential. And they just set us on a course of, okay, this is where she is developmentally wise. We're going to create a program, a diet, a physical and academic program to get her to where she needs to be age appropriate. So that was a journey. And, you know, it's been a lifetime of therapy, OT, PT, speech therapy, music therapy, light therapy.
Sounds expensive.
Acupuncture. I know my husband has worked so hard, you know, for us to be able to do all of this. And
describe what she's like today.
Well, she is a Pittsburgh Steeler loving fan. She's just a big Pittsburgh Steeler fan. She works 3 jobs. She works at a theater production group. It's called Theater West Virginia. She does just different tasks there, mostly at the concession. She works at a place called IHOP, International House of Pancakes, and she volunteers at Hospice of Southern West Virginia. I'm sure you guys know what hospice is. Well, she does. I know I have friends say, what is she doing in hospice? And I said, well, she's doing office work. So she does office work there.
And her health?
Her health is so good. Oh my goodness. She is just, yeah. We're doing our, you know, we have our garden, we grow our food. I meant to bring you guys some, I just ran out and forgot because I'm a huge canner. Do y'all do that?
Not on the bus, we don't.
No. I wish I had remembered. I'd have brought you guys.
Please don't worry. We're just grateful that you're here.
Yeah.
So, well, that's a story, isn't it? Especially with the MMR being pushed right now because of the so-called measles mania.
Everything's being pushed.
Yeah.
They're still, and I went to our doctor. I love our doctor. In fact, during the whole COVID thing, we usually go and have our annual in the summer, and he said, I just wanted to tell you guys, don't get the COVID vaccine. I said, don't worry, we're not. You know, he said, since the vaccine rollout, he said, I'm treating at least 7 patients a month for myocarditis. And I just looked at him and I said, please tell me you're not still giving it. I mean, when you know better, then you have to do better. I said, please tell me. And he goes, oh, Kristen. He jumps back. He gets all defensive. He goes, oh, Kristen, I don't know of anybody that is. I said, good. Because it's wrong. It's wrong. I understand it. I understand. To me, at this point, it's just an evil motive. I mean, when you know better, when you know what these things are doing to people, to kids. Now I have a grandchild. So my first grandchild, she's a month old.
Is she toxin free?
Well, my daughter, she refused the HEP in the hospital because, you know, they start them out in the hospital. I think they start this so when the injury begins, whether it's however it manifests itself, seizures or sensory or gut issues. We know that's a big thing with the vaccines. What are the other, so many things, the eye problems.
So she's had a few shots, your granddaughter?
She had the vitamin K.
Okay, how's she doing?
She's doing good, and I am really doing my work. I am praying over her, and I think that's a huge factor. Prayer is what got us this, and I'm talking to my daughter because she lives a block from us. So I see her every day. I was just there this morning, and I've watched her, and she feeds really well. She's breastfeeding. She's a milk machine. It's just amazing. You know, God gives us this wonderful gift that women can breastfeed, and she has good, even now, she's so alert. She's exactly a month old. And she is so alert. Her eyes are following my fingers, and she has good reflexes. I'm testing her for those, and Any advice on what else I need to test her for to make sure that she's where she needs to be? My daughter has really, I believe she's turned a corner on the whole vaccine thing, because she told me, she used to say, well, we're not getting all of them. And I said, well, the same people that made the COVID, the same manufacturers that made the COVID vaccine makes them all. Do you really believe they're going to make a safe product? I said, let's make some deductions here and let's think logically. So that's what the angle that I thought I'm going to come from, because maybe, just maybe, you know. And she just kind of looks at me and she says, probably not. I said, no. So I've sent her everything. I've sent her everything I have, all of from the children's
group of baddies make the shots. So
right.
There's not one. Pfizer doesn't make them all. Moderna doesn't make them all.
Right.
Mack and all those other big bad people out there. But yeah, collectively they are the big baddies for sure.
So they're not going to suddenly say, oh, we're going to make a safe product here because we care about you.
Well, they're already saying they're making a safe product.
Yeah, well.
They just lie. Anyway, listen, thank you for telling your story. I'm glad she's doing well. I'm glad you got a beautiful granddaughter. And it sounds like we're all on the right path. But thank you for telling the story. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.